This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. Delighted as always to be joined on a Sunday, making it a regular thing with Dave Coldwell. How you doing, Dave?
I'm all right, thanks. Yeah, really good, thanks. Really good. Sundays, football's back, so it's all good. It's all good.
Did you go after football this morning, having stayed up all night watching Spence Garcia?
Yes, I didn't stay up all night. I say I didn't stay up all night. I ended up getting a couple hours sleep, if that, and then waking up for it.
God, I wish I did that, but that's why I'm going to be off the camera and keeping these nice bags under my eyes away from everybody. Let's go back a little bit to Friday night. Lerrone Richards made his Matchroom boxing debut. You now, of course, train Lerrone Richards. Bit of a mixed bag, I think it's fair to say. Dave, what did you make of his performance?
His performance, I'm looking at it as a progression. You know, this was a fight to get him out before the end of the year. We'd only just signed with Matchroom like 10 days prior to the fight, asking Eddie if we can get him out just to have a run, because he spent so much time away from his young family, that I want him to have something to show for it, and also just to blow off some cobwebs because he's not boxed for a year. So we got the opponent with a couple of days notice, and obviously it's not the opponent that I wanted. I knew he was just going to be a stayer. In fact, the message back that I gave him when I saw that opponent was, he goes into a shell once he knows he's out of his depth, and it's not ideal for somebody of Lerrone's style. But it was either that or nobody really. I mean, you can't go and box a young Brit that when you've given up your British title to move on, what have you. You can't go and box some young Brit that nobody's heard of. You at least get a European that's going to give him some rounds. And I was happy with Lerrone's performance, what he did. He threw more left hands than what he normally does. I'm trying to get him out of that. The one criticism I've got of Lerrone when he come to me was that he was somebody that likes to box at his own pace, and somebody that predominantly is one-handed. But I felt he used his left hand quite a lot, and as it went on, he was throwing it more and more and more. So there's progression there. But was it a case of where he could have stepped it if he's put together a 30-second burst? Could have got him out there? Then perhaps, yeah. But I'm not bothered about him, stopping somebody like Timo Lane. Does it make him more of a candidate to fight for a major title going forward, and by stopping him in a few rounds? No, it doesn't. Does it make it more marketable? Then yeah, perhaps so. But sometimes the marketing side of things don't run together with the development side of things, and then you get found out when you step up the levels. He needed the rounds in the bank, so I'm happy with that. He did a lot of things that I was happy with. Just the one thing that he didn't really put the foot to the floor. But you've got to look at styles. He's not a come forward, grind you down sort of fighter. He's not a fighter. He's a boxer. He's a thinking boxer, and he will rely on his skills to beat you. Does that mean that he can't hurt you? No, it doesn't. Because if he didn't hurt Timo, then Timo would have just walked him down. And it's the same thing when he's fighting all his previous fights. No, he's not the biggest puncher in the world, but he hits hard enough to stop them in the tracks or stop them from just walking him down. So in that terms, then that's what he is. But he's developing a bit more power, and he hits harder than what his record suggests. But if it's a guy that's not going to throw any punches and he's going to go on the back foot, and you're expecting Lerrone to, especially his first fight with a new coach, first fight for a year, no crowds, everything blended together. If you're expecting to put his hands up and start throwing a million punches around, that's not that kind of fighter.
Yeah, it's kind of where I wanted to go with it, really. I mean, having seen Timo Lane box against Leon Boone a few fights back, I mean, he is, he's not the type of fighter that somebody like Lerrone Richards is always going to look great against. I guess the question is, and you make an interesting point about developing him as a fighter, but also developing his brand. This is a business, it's entertainment.
Yeah.
Do you need to see him be able to prize open an opponent like that in the next couple of fights, or do you go for somebody who's going to let their hands go and make him look like a better fighter?
No, it's all part of development. It's 13 fights in. And this is what I'm, we're working on things like that. If you've seen Lerrone box before, then you'll see that he did do new things in that fight, but it's a process. It's the first fight with a new coach and everything, and the whole matchroom thing. It is a process, and it's against a cagey kind of opponent. Yes, you have to prize fighters. You have to pry them open, but you're talking about a guy that as soon as he's a track record, as soon as he's out of his depth, he goes into a box. That's it, and he goes into a shell. That's it. If somebody's there to win, and this was a little fight to get him out there before the new year, rather than just waiting until end of January and longer. Like I said, I wanted him to have a fight just to blow off some cobwebs. So he's had that now. So in the new year, we want to fight somebody that's coming to win. Now, when somebody's coming to win, yes, even if the cage in the box on the back foot, you have to pry them open. You have to be able to feint. You have to be able to do things to tease them, to throw punches. But also, if they're there to win, they are going to throw punches at you because they have to try and beat you. So that's what I'm saying is you're going to see the best of him when he's in with better opposition. But yes, he does need to develop that. But that's things that are ongoing, and you're trying to get him to learn. Like I said, he did things in that fight that are new to him. He felt that were new to him. He, like I said, he threw more punches than what he would normally do, and he was having to go on the front foot, which again isn't something that he's used to doing as such.
Just want to go back and talk about a few things with regards to Lerrone's development. Obviously, I was in the bubble with you a couple of weeks ago for the Conor Ben show. We saw, even in Matchroom releasing their own content of him, a student of the game, sitting down, watching fights and kind of analysing and seeing what he can take and pick from each fighter to incorporate into his own game. Just let us know what fighters that you've suggested that for him to watch, what to take from those fighters, etc.
There's a variety of fighters, obviously you look at good southpaw boxers, yes, but it's the mentality and the attitude and the brains of a whole range of boxers that are out there from the past that I want him to incorporate. Little things even down to like little things. What I said to him for the fight on Friday night, I was saying to him, you may have to use little bits of a Calzaghe. I explained to him, when Calzaghe gets somebody stumble or get him into a little bit of trouble, and then he'd fire off a load of shots, and it almost like gives the referee an excuse to stop the fighter. Little things like that. But again, it's all part of a development, and you have to take things and you have to get comfortable with things and develop. But there's all sorts of fighters. There's even down to people like Lara, the way that he throws his left hand. There's all sorts of fighters, that I ask him to study. We go through phases in my gym with all the fighters. Hopi and Jordan will work on different fighters to study, just that they might do this better, they might do that better. But again, it's a process. It's little things like all the way through camp, trying to get him to fire that right hook underneath after the two, after throwing the backhand. Eventually he started doing that in the fight, and he started doing that, which he was looking at trying to do in sparring, I know it sounds simple, but when certain fighters aren't used to throwing certain shots, then it is a bigger thing. But then he started doing it in the fight, and then there's layer caking things on top of things, and it's development. It's 14 fights in now. He's had periods of inactivity. So the main thing that I said when we got working together is I need him to be active and become an active fighter. And so the things that we're working on in the gym, we can then put into practice under the lights and start getting comfortable. And so, yes, from a marketing point of view, I would have liked him to have stopped him around 6-7 rounds. But in the greater scheme of things, stopping Timo Lane for Lerrone's development, does that make any difference? Or has he taken away things from the 8 rounds that he had, where he understands now what I've been saying and understands that It's not just somebody saying things. It's okay, yeah, I understand that, yeah, because he's gone through things now, and it's about his development. There's plenty of fighters that if you look at, good fighters, world champions, where they've come across opponents where they've not looked that good, and people then going, oh, he's not going to beat him. He's not going to become world champion, rah, rah. And then all of a sudden, fast forward a year or two, and all of a sudden, hang on a minute, he's a world champion. I'm sure I remember, I'll revert to Callum Smith because he's involved in a massive fight coming up against Canelo. I'm sure Callum Smith had a fight once against somebody that was just a tough guy. He couldn't get rid of him, and perhaps didn't look $1 million. And people then saying, "Oh, he's not as good as what we thought it was." That's boxing. It's not about where you are now, especially when you're 13, 14 fights in, especially when you haven't fought for a year, especially when you're in with a new coach. It's not about where you are now. It's about where does the progression take you. Have you progressed? Have you done little things that you've worked on in the gym? Have you managed to put them into place and fight? And the answer for that one is yes. Obviously, you're not privy to that. You don't see what we're working on in the gym day in, day out. But he's moved forward, and I was actually happy with him. Apart from, like I said, which he's not that kind of fighter, which he could have put his foot fully to the pedal, put it to the floor to get rid of him, but he didn't, and that's where the criticism, I suppose, is coming from, But Timo Lane's had a lot of fights at a higher level than what Lerrone's boxed at, and he's only been stopped a couple of times. He's only been stopped a few times by aggressive come forward fighters mainly. And like I said, Lerrone's not an aggressive come forward fighter. I'm not comparing him, and please don't say I am. I'm not anything like that. But somebody that relies on skills and smarts, like Mayweather when he stepped up through the divisions, and not from when he was pretty boy, when he was going out there blasting everybody. I'm talking about when he was Money Mayweather. If he was in with a guy that was tough and what have you, then he would box and box and box, and eventually over the 12 rounds he would pick them apart and then start, then he'd stop a lot of them. But he would rely on his skills. I'm not saying Lerrone's that kind of fighter, but what I'm saying is Lerrone's always been used to relying on his jab, relying on just boxing at one pace. You look through all his career, it's kind of like been like that. When I've looked at his fights before he came to me, I kind of thought that, like, it's very one pace. Got to inject some gears into him. That takes time, And like I said, his punch output, especially with the left hand, was pretty good the other night. But it takes a bit of a process, and so I'm over the moon we've got that fight out of the way. He's had the 8 rounds out to blow off any cobwebs and unfamiliarities, and also, like I said, with no crowd as well. You can't use that and say that for other fighters and then not address it to him as well. Every fighter that goes in there, some fighters, when they're hearing the crowds and stuff like that, some fighters lift it up and can go at it a little bit more, and some fighters it doesn't affect. Whether or not that had any bearing on that, I don't know, but it's part of an education. 13, 14 fights in, it's an education at that stage. I mean, we're so much in a rush to get these kids right to the top. The level that we're aiming at for Lerrone, I haven't got a problem with putting him in for a European title in the early part of next year. That's not a problem. But like I said, is when you see fighters that are actually throwing and trying to beat him, you'll see the best of him, because he has got tools and he has got an arsenal about him. He's just not a come forward, walk you down, grind you down kind of fighter. He will outbox you, pushing you back, and he will outbox you and still beat you up, so to speak. But is he just going to hands up and willing to take 2 or 3 shots on the gloves to fire back and things like that? No. But then if he was to do that, and if he was getting caught on the way in, then everybody was slagging him off for that. This is what happens in boxing, If you hit and don't get hit, you get slagged off because you didn't put a foot down or you didn't get rid of the guy. And if you take shots on the way in, you're gonna get slagged off because your defense is shit. If you load up on every shot, then be he's trying to get rid of him. He's trying too hard to get rid of him in there. Just win, learn, add to your game, and then eventually you become a bit of a package. And that is there, whether you're good, with the timing that where the fights come in, are you good enough or not? And that's what we'll find out.
From one southpaw slickster to another super middleweight, Billy Joe Saunders headlined the show on Friday night against Martin Murray. Well, two questions really. What did you make of Billy Joe's performance, and how far do you feel Lerrone Richards is from kind of bridging the gap where he's at now to world level?
Oh, we've got to get to European level, yeah. He's been British and Commonwealth champion. He's 14 fights in. He's 14 fights in. Let's not compare him to your Billy Joes and your Callum Smiths yet. He's 14 fights in, and he's been inactive for a year. He needs to get some consistency, and we need a good year. We need a good 2021 at European level and fringe world class level. They're the fights that we want to bring him on. More time in the gym, more time learning, and then let's assess in a year's time. But let's not, we know what happens when you start rushing prospects and start talking about them in other people's breath. Where Lerrone will say is himself, let's be sensible. British and Commonwealth champion. Next step is you move on to European. Let's see what we do at European. Get that couple of learning fights, then we progress again. I don't want him. It's like I said, 13, 14 fights in. He's still developing, and he's still learning about himself in the ring because of the inactivity as well. He's learning about himself under fight situations. As for Billy's performance, I thought he boxed well. Martin Murray's a veteran, a clever veteran that's been at the absolute elite of the sport. Golovkin's, Sergio Martinez, Felix Sturm, been in with George Groves. He's been in with some serious opponents. You don't come out of those fights without developing as a fighter, whether you win or lose. This is the thing. When you're sharing a ring with these guys, when you've got some sort of intelligence about yourself, you pick things away from those fights. You take things away from them, and you add them to your arsenal. And whether that's in a defensive capacity when maybe it's not there, you can't pull the trigger, you can't land the shots that you want to do because of father time and because of inactivity or whatever it might be, then you know how to look after yourself. You know how to kind of buy moments, buy seconds, buy space in the ring. And Martin Murray knows all of that, and Martin gave it everything he got. He gave what he's got left. It was an opportunity that he had. He took it, and I think Billy did. The fight went as I kind of expected it to. I thought it was going to be on point, but I thought it'd be quite one-sided with Billy, and that's how it was. Billy Joe Saunders is a very, very intelligent fighter. Ring generalship, things like that. These are things like that will. People like Lerrone and other fighters coming through need to learn ring generalship. And it's just bit by bit learning, sharing the ring with people. That's how that'll come on. And Billy's got that in abundance as well as his skills. His intelligence and his ring generalship to go with his skills are fantastic. So he got the job done. And same thing again. It's no crowd. I can't stress to you how much of a weird atmosphere it is for these fighters that fight behind closed doors. Everybody, not just matchroom for them TK fighters, everybody that's doing shows, Top Rank, everybody that's doing shows where there's no crowd. It is a weird atmosphere because it's almost like there is no atmosphere. There's a few voices that you'll hear. It's strange. And again, when you see a lot of the fights, a lot of the common theme that people are calling them is that a lot of them seem to be saying, it's a bit like a sparring session, a bit like, yeah, because that's how the sparring environment is, But then obviously in sparring, sometimes you'll have out and out warfare, and that's what we're getting as well. We're getting there's a mixture of fights and types of fights that you're having. But when you've got two clever fighters like Billy Joe and Martin Murray in the ring, then there's never going to be a war. There's never going to be, you know, an out slugfest. It was always going to be about Billy Joe's performance and can Martin drag out of himself something that might still be there.
Moving on from Friday night, last night, interesting domestic fight. Anthony Yarde versus Lyndon Arthur. I think the general consensus was going in that was a very, very close fight, despite what the bookies thought, and that's what we saw last night. Yeah,
it was. Very cagey, weren't it? Very cagey. I think it was always going in. It was always a lot closer than what some people thought. You know, Anthony Yarde's a very, very good fighter, but he, I don't know. I think he seems to struggle with certain elements of the game. If an opponent employs that, you know, a good jab, a bit of movement, and he was just falling short. I felt as though he was falling short for a lot of the fight, and Lyndon was just popping him with a jab when he wanted to throw it, popping him. It was close. I mean, I think it was one of those where sometimes Yarde might hit the gloves and you might think that he's actually landing, but he was hitting the gloves. And a lot of the jabs that Arthur was landing were quite, especially early on, were decent jabs that were like landing flush, so you could see them landing very, very clear. But there wasn't a lot in it. But I just felt as though I thought I was waiting at any second for Anthony Yarde to go up through the gears and really go at him, because every time he did, I mean, it was quite early on. I think he landed his first right hand. It might have been the fourth round. He landed a good right hand, and it was on the side of the head. And you saw the reaction of Lyndon in that. I think he felt it. I'm not saying it hurt him, but he felt the weight of it, and he reacted in a manner where it was like, shit, here we go, expecting a follow-up onslaught, but it didn't come, and so Yarde just went back into his same shape, kept doing the same thing. It wasn't until like late on in the fight where there seemed any sort of urgency from Anthony Yarde, and when it's a fight that's that close, well, it wasn't a robbery. It wasn't a robbery for starters. But if Yarde would have nicked it by a round, then I don't think Lyndon could have said it was a robbery, because it was like neither of them did enough to win, sort of thing. So when I nearly said final whistle, when the final bell went, and I'm seeing Yarde and his team celebrating so it was like a clear-cut win, I was a little bit, really? I thought, well, that puzzled me, and I thought you're seeing something different to what I'm seeing. But I can understand how that looks. Been there before, not long ago, where I've seen a fight completely different when I've watched it on TV. But no, during that fight, you could see when you're ringside, when you're in the ring, on the ring apron, or you're in the ring, you know if those punches are landing or not. You know you do, and there was a lot of missing, a lot of falling around and a lot of missing. But I thought it was close, because it was like, yes, Lyndon's working the day. I thought Pat Barrett did his best to get more out of Lyndon Arthur. You know, Pat knows his man, and he knows what's in there. He knows how to, Lyndon, again, it's only, I don't know him, but from looking at it, it didn't look like Lyndon believed that he could perhaps not believe that he could win, but it didn't look like he believed in throwing the right hand. Because Pat asked him if there was a problem with the right hand, and he said no. He said, I can't get it off. I can't land it. You know, he didn't feel confident in throwing it because he didn't see the opening for it. So, and he even said that in an interview straight after to Yarde, I think he said. But Pat did his best to get him to throw the right hand, but he didn't. He was reluctant to throw it. And the thing is, if a trainer can tell a fighter what he needs to do, But if the fighter, when he's in that combat situation, if he's wary about throwing it, then he's going to be reluctant to throw it, and that's how it seemed. And it just seemed as though he was comfortable just throwing the jab, and just trying to nick it that way. But Arthur Yarde never really adjusted and didn't really start going for it until the last couple of rounds. And then you saw what happened when he started unloading. Is there something missing in the mental makeup of him? Is he caught between something? I don't know. It's very hard I don't know the guy, so it's very hard. It's all right. I'm just same as every fan now, sat watching him fight and saying my opinion on his performance or my opinion on what he should do and all that sort of stuff. But that's the same goes for every fan that says about every fighter. We all have these opinions on what other people should do, but it's the book stops with the fighter. If he's happy with doing the same thing, then he'll stick to doing the same thing. If that's his comfort zone and that's how he wants to be, and if you so I'll go back to Lerrone. If Lerrone wants to stay in his comfort zone when he's fighting, then he will reach a certain level. But if he wants to take himself out of a comfort zone, he has the potential to go well beyond that. Now, it's the same thing of Yarde. We look at Anthony Yarde and we see somebody that looks like he has immense talent. We see somebody that looks like he has seriously heavy hands. But what he's been doing, and this is nothing to his training side of things, I'm seeing a lot of stuff on social media and things like that. It's always easy and it's always the go-to thing for people to say, get another trainer. It's always easy to do that. People seem to love to do that, regardless. I'm somebody that gets that myself towards with my fighters. So I understand where that's coming from. But it's always easy to say, you should do this, you should do that. But if he has just been doing the same thing all the way through, runs into Kovalev, and then believes that nothing was wrong, either during the fight with Kovalev or in the preparation of Kovalev, if you believe there's nothing that's wrong there, you will then probably do the same shit again, right? So you carry on doing the same thing again, run into Lyndon Arthur, and kind of similar sort of story, apart from he didn't empty his tank. Then you kind of is it that roadblock there? So they're two losses, similar sort of faults. If you then go back and just carry on doing the same thing again, that's going to happen again, because there's a blueprint there on how to beat Anthony Yarde. And the thing is, with Kovalev, you can say Kovalev can bang, and he threw some meaty shots. Lyndon Arthur just beat him with a jab. He literally just beat him with a jab and with foot movement, and that was it. So if you're a light heavyweight and you're talking about a Bivol who's got good feet, can box, but he likes to throw that right hand as well, he likes to throw that long left hook as well, there's more danger there. If you're talking about a Buatsi, that's a great fight at the levels that they're at. Callum Johnson. These are all now fights where we've all been talking about and saying, oh, Callum Johnson, Anthony Yarde, Buatsi, Anthony Yarde, want to see this. Who's going to win? Who's going to win? Who's going to? But if he's going to go through the same thing over and over again and not show improvements, not show adjustments, then he's going to struggle. And like I said, it doesn't mean change your trainer. I don't know the dynamics of that relationship. I don't know what they do. Nobody knows what goes off in the gym. He might do shit in the gym, but not do it in fight night. I don't know, because I don't know the kid. Only Anthony Yarde knows, and only his team knows. But what I will say is, if you are told continuously that you're great, and if you are told continuously that everything you're doing is just fucking brilliant, just perfect, just great, you're the champ, you're the man, all that, and when you hit the little bumps in the roads, nothing gets adjusted for that, then you're never going to improve. You're not going to improve, and it's simple as that. And Anthony Yarde didn't have many amateur fights, I got told, so he's learning on the job. But you have to keep figuring out the problems to be learning on the job. If you're ignoring the problems, you're not going to learn on the job. You're going to stay at the same level, and you're going to consistently lose for the same reasons. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's kind of, it's indicative, I think, of how, because there's obviously some very natural or raw credentials in Anthony Yarde that could, you know, translated into the right type of whatever he needs to do behind the scenes. There is, you know, the hallmarks of a very capable fighter, certainly athletically very gifted athlete. It's just what is kind of stopping that, us seeing that in the ring, I guess, which is kind of what you're saying. But it is very easy to immediately say the trainer, the training setup, this, the training setup, that. But
you see, again, I don't see what goes up in that gym. Tundi might do absolutely fucking everything that needs to be done with Anthony Yarde. I think he's brought him through from scratch. You know, he's done a hell of a job. Look at where Anthony Yarde is. Look at what they've achieved. You know, but if Tundi's want him to do certain things and he's not doing them, then how is that Tundi's fault? Because we've seen it. I know it. We've seen it where the trainer will be telling a fighter to do something. I remember for years with Brendan, with certain fights that didn't happen, I'd be in the gym and I'd see him warning the fighter about what might happen. And then the fighter's just not really taking on board the advice. And then the fight happens, and then Brendan said, "Do you remember when I was telling him this, telling him that?" And he was like, "We know because we're in the gym." But everybody else on the outside, I'd be like, they just point fingers. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm not privy to what goes on in that gym and what's being said. I don't know. We only see what they allow us to see. So the tippy tap pads and stuff like that, that might not be all that they do. They might actually do other sort of stuff. We don't know. They've done a great job on marketing him, and part of their marketing and everything like that is kind of what we see, the interpretation of their lines of the camp, the training, that sort of stuff. But what I will say, like I said, is this lines of the camp and all that sort of stuff. It's great motivational stuff, and it works. Obviously, it works to a level, but there's a lot more that needs to be said to take a fighter to win title fights. You know, especially if you're in 50-50 fights, or if you're in fights where you're the underdog. You know, there is more than that, and sometimes, like I said, we don't hear everything that's going off in the corners on fight night. You know, you pick up one line, and it's amplified. It's like, all he said was this, all he said was that. But it might be just that one line got caught on the mic where he's being told something like, just, I don't know, just work. But he's not being told, you're not hearing that he might have told him how to work, how to cut him off, what shots to throw. But if you're just being told, just work, let your hands go, whatever. Or if you're just being told every time he comes back to corner, you're pissing it, it's easy, he's doing nothing. Because, I mean, there were bits where I'd just hear where, well, all he said was he's about Arthur, he's scared. That's it. He's scared. He's frightened to death. Let your hands go, or whatever. Well, it might have told him exactly how to do that, you know. But we only hear little things, so it's very, very difficult. Only Yarde and the people in that corner will know the full extent of those conversations. But he boxed in a manner that didn't look like there was any urgency. They boxed in a manner that didn't look like it was a close fight. And that is for me, that was plain to see it was a close fight. And also, after a short few rounds, they must have known that he was only throwing one hand. But they didn't adjust to that, or they didn't, But it's like I said, we can all talk, and I'm just same as any fan right now, just guessing about what went wrong. Ultimately he got he got beat, and now he has to whatever way that is, he has to learn from that. He has to acknowledge. I mean, I saw his tweet today where he still believes that he won the fight. Fair enough. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. But you can still believe that you won the fight, but you can also understand that you need to add more in order to come back. Lerrone, well done. You got to win. What you did it yourself. You looked like you had tools, but if you would have added a couple of little things into that, you'd have looked really, really good. And that's every fighter, no matter what they do, no matter how they win, there's always little things you can take and go, okay, but if you'd have done that, then that wouldn't have happened. Even if you just got clipped one shot, you think, oh, if I was in against a big puncher and I give him that shot there because my left hand was right down here, I might have got cleaned out. Okay, so next time, just think. So you can take away things. Even if you blasted somebody out in a round, you can take things away. But you have to be able to acknowledge that there's room for improvement. If you think that you're the finished article and all you have to do is to turn up, then you got problems.
Okay, well, Dave, that seems like probably a good point to leave it there. I've taken up enough of your Sunday, family man that you are.
Cheers,
you don't
mate.
want to be sitting here speaking to me. I will catch up with you, I'm sure, at some point next week, but always a pleasure. Thanks very much speaking to Boxing Social, and congratulations on a win for Lerrone Richards in his Matchroom debut.
Thanks, mate. Cheers. Ciao.
Cheers, Dave.